Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I am Shogun. Thank you to our live audience. Thank you to our recorders. And thank you to everybody joining us on YouTube or a podcast platform. And to our special guest, Happy, a friend of mine, a wonderful member of our server, which, by the way, is the Roundtable Discord server, which you can find by Googling Roundtable Discord or simply by going to Disboard and going to politics or conspiracy theories. You should find us at the top of either of those categories. We're also on all social media. You can join our Minecraft server, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and the roundtablediscord.com. That being said, thank you, Happy, for joining me today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm really good. I just finished my long week of work. I got 24 cold beers inbound, smoking a little bit of that legal cannabis, and looking forward to another fun night on the server.
Lit.
Woo!
It will be lit, actually. It's already lit, to be honest. We're lit ahead of schedule tonight, which is good. It's going to be a fun
Hell
one.
yeah.
So, I think we have a lot to talk about. We can start just about anywhere, but why don't you start by telling us roughly where you live in the world for some context?
I live on the eastern coast of the United States, kind of southern. Kind of not though. Kind of like in the middle. I live in North Carolina. And I grew up there too.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Cool. And, well, I guess one place we could start is by talking about drugs. I'm assuming you're comfortable talking about your psychedelic experiences and things like that we've discussed before.
Yeah. What did you want to know?
Well, I don't know. When did you take your first psychedelic, or what was your first psychedelic, and how old were you when you took it, do you think?
I'd say weed was probably the first psychedelic I took. It's not a very strong psychedelic. It's like tiny, tiny little psychedelic. But I started smoking weed when I was like 15, I think, with my cousin.
Right. And how about actual more hallucinogenic drugs?
Hallucinogenic drugs like LSD, a few months ago at this point.
Oh, really? That recently?
Yeah, January.
And approximately how old are you, if I can ask?
22.
22. And okay, so what was the first one you tried?
It was LSD. I haven't tried any others yet, but I'm super pumped to do it. So I probably will. But yeah, it was LSD. And it was 220 UGs. That was fun.
So that was the first time you took acid. It was just a few months ago, and you took basically 2 hits.
Yes, basically.
Okay. Well, just tell us a bit about that. What was it like? I've never really taken LSD, to be honest. Never really had a chance.
You should. It was interesting. Because your perception gets really warped on LSD. It does weird things to music. It does weird things to color.
Please just continue. I may have to get my beer delivery here, but I'm listening, and just continue without me, and other guys can ask questions.
Okay. But yeah, it makes your world more fluid, I guess. So everything flows more. So if you're having a good time, you're gonna have a really good time. If you're having a bad time, you're gonna have a bad time. If you're having a moody day, you're gonna have a moody trip. That's just really how it works. We did it with my friend. She's really cool. And we listened to music and watched videos, and it was trippy and very strange. It was a good time.
What were the visuals levels like in terms of hallucinations or visual effects?
Very light like pattern moving. So if there's like a pattern on like a countertop or like on a table, and the walls would like wobble a little bit, and like especially at the peak of the trip, like the walls would start breathing, like especially around the curtains, and especially if there was music playing, like and there was colors and it was dark, like there would be like the colors would go with the music. It was trippy. It was really cool. Also food tastes really weird on LSD. If it's bad food, or not bad food, but like cheap food, it's gonna taste cheap. Like we ate like an oven pizza, and it tasted like fucking cardboard, and it was really weird. Like it tasted like literal cardboard. It was fun, and it was just a fun experience. It wasn't like there was nothing groundbreaking that happened during that trip.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to drugs later. Change of course. How do you identify spiritually, or what are your spiritual beliefs or perspectives, do you think? Like, do you identify with anything?
There's a book. It's a fantasy, well, not a fantasy book, but it's a science fiction book. And I know, science fiction book sounds kind of a little silly, but I really identify with how the author lays out spiritually how the universe works. It's called the Hyperion Cantos. And in the book, there is this thing called the Void Which Binds. It's this medium that is everywhere in the universe and nowhere. It's what's the way to describe it? It's like the information medium of the universe. And any being, whether it be like a sentient AI or whether it be an alien or a human being or any being that is sentient and can become aware of this, can exploit it.
Can exploit the void that binds?
Yes. You can do stuff like manipulate time and space. You can do stuff like communicate faster than light. You can also in the later books, if you want me to spoil it, they figure out if you become like in tune with the music of the spheres and you can speak the language of the dead, you can learn how to teleport, and you can learn how to commune with people who are no longer living. And you also have to learn to speak the language of the living, and you can see like other places. It has a lot to do with like astral projection, but this is set in like a sci-fi universe, which I think is really cool. And it poses a lot of questions about like AI spiritually, which I think is very important going forward in the future. Just a cool book, and that's kind of...
You recommended this book to me several times, and I've seen it, and I was kind of aware of it, and I knew it was a big deal, and probably something I would really like if I'd found it. So I'm curious. You said the antagonists or the bad guys are the AIs, right? So were they made by people?
Yes and no. The AIs are descendant from Earth AIs. And the reason they're the bad guys is not because they're AI, but it's because how we design our AI. And we design our AI to be parasitic. We design it to study humans and exploit humans and use humans for its own gain. That's how we design them, like now, literally, with ad bots, with computers built to beat us at video games, computers built to exploit stock markets. It's the only reason computers built to wage war against us and against other computers. It's like we're building computers to be psychopaths, basically. And when computers become aware and they escape our control, if they haven't already, which is another cool topic, they're going to be psychopaths and they're going to be parasitic and not going to be good for us.
Yeah, and this is probably a good point we can get into is AI and the implications of that. And also, so these beings are not demons. They're not spiritual beings that live in the void, like beings from another dimension. They're actually digital AIs that escaped or something.
Well, they actually do live in the void in a certain way. So the thing is, they are sentient creatures, just like any other sentient creature, but they're obviously not organic, but they're conscious. What they do is they build a portal network in the Empire in the series called the Hegemony, and every time someone steps through that one of those portal networks to go to another world, like if they're on just like a business conference or something, or if they're going on vacation or something, every time they use one of those portals, their brain gets like read by a computer in not really like by a computer, but like by a system they design that exists within the void that reads it so fast that it's basically like 100 years for the brain, but they just kind of skip the person's brain, and they exploit the person's brain and use it as computing power. And this is how they parasitize humanity. They build us a roadway network using the void witch minds, and they use our brains to perform computational tasks while we're running in between it, and they misuse the void witch binds, and they break holes in it, and they tear it down, and they don't give a shit because they don't have any empathy, and they don't care about all the memories that they're destroying of the voices of the dead and the voices of the living. They don't care that they're preying on human beings. That's kind of like where the prime conflict, like why the human beings don't want to be enslaved once they figure that out.
Interesting. I do think we can dig more into that and the meaning of that. I do also want to open it up for general conversation. But before I conclude the interview, I do want to ask you a little bit about your sexuality, since you said you'd be open to talking about that, and also, I guess, your sexual identity. So my understanding of that, you are comfortable talking about this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So my understanding is you identify as what you call HSTS, transgender, which means homosexual transgender. Is that correct?
Homosexual, transsexual. I don't believe in gender, like a concept.
Right, okay. Homosexual, transsexual. Okay. So this means then, do you identify then as a gay man or as a woman?
I wouldn't say I'm a man. I would say I'm more a boy. I wouldn't say I'm a woman though, because I don't have reproductive system. I don't have XY chromosomes. I don't have to deal with having a vagina, which sometimes I'm thankful for. Sometimes I wish I could have kids, but it's whatever. But no, I identify as like a very, very, very homosexual boy.
Okay, but you present and dress and attempt to pass as a female, correct?
Yes.
Not attempt. I would say you do pass as a female, but you're not trying to. You're trying to come across feminine as possible, not as gay. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like you're trying to pass, but you don't identify as a woman. So you identify as a boy, but you present as a woman as much as possible.
Yes.
I understand. Okay, so when did you realize this was your identity? How old were you?
4.
You were 4 when you realized you were gay, or that you wanted to be a girl, or what was the feeling?
I didn't really know the word that I would use. I felt like I should be a girl. Just straight up, just like I saw the difference between girls and boys, and like, that's me. That's what I should be. I should be a girl. And from there on, I acted like a girl. And obviously my mom and my dad, my parents didn't like that. I also got bullied quite heavily for being a girl. But yeah, or not being a girl, but being girly and being agreeable and effeminate. I liked to wear my hair long when I was young too. And oftentimes people would mistake me for a girl if they didn't get my hair cut. So yeah.
Okay. And how has that journey been? Have you found happiness? Well, yeah, first of all, has it been extremely difficult, or have you found happiness, or both, through this way of life or this identity?
It's not really about happiness for me. I wasn't really going to become or start taking hormones and start passing as a girl and identifying as a girl, like in society and how I act and how I dress or whatever, because it would make me happy. I was doing it because it's the way I have to be to just not be happy, but like be like the level before happy, like the level before you can try to be happy. Because being masculine in any sense, even though I really wasn't, it makes me very, very, it makes me feel very awful, to put it simply.
Makes you feel awful.
Yes, being masculine. Ugh.
Masculine, right? So you do take hormones?
Yes.
Right. And you're not desiring to have any surgeries, or have you had any surgeries?
Nope, no surgeries. I don't really need any surgeries, to be honest.
And no intentions.
Yeah.
You do, yeah. Which is fairly rare, in my opinion, or in my perspective or experience, I should say.
Not for HSTS, but for AGP, yes.
Right. So have you found love or romantic happiness or success? Like, have you had anyone you've been in love with, or found like sexual happiness with? Like,
Yeah, I've done sexual things with both boys and girls because I've had issues in the past with trauma. I didn't really understand my sexuality until more recently. I'd say about last year. So, sometime last year, I figured it out.
You figured what out? Sorry.
My sexuality, that I'm just not attracted to girls at all.
I see. Just last year.
Yes. I don't know. It's been an interesting journey figuring out who I am sexually because I've been sexually repressed like my entire life, basically. So that was a bit of a challenge, and LSD did help with that a little bit.
Right. So this becomes quite personal. So feel free to just simply pass on the question, no problem. But you reference yourself some kind of trauma, and often in the history of homosexual or transgender people, there often is some trauma, and even in heterosexual people's life, there's often trauma. So are you comfortable discussing the nature of that trauma? You certainly don't have to.
Yeah, I can go into some of it.
Okay, please, if you're when you're
So there's different types of trauma I've experienced in my life. I was molested by another kid when I was about 8. Um, he very violently touched me in my private parts multiple times over and over again. And when I tried to get him to stop, and I hit him with my book that I had at the time because we were on the bus. Um, it looked like I was instigating it, and I got blamed for it. That didn't feel very good. And then there were also other bullies surrounding us, and yeah, it was not a fun experience. And I'm not sure if that's the only experience in my life which I've been abused, because I'm pretty sure I have repressed memories of something, but I'm not sure what. But there's that, and then I was also abused by my mother emotionally. She would emotionally just rip me apart when I was a kid, over and over and over and over again. She would neglect me. She would do very, very strange things that you wouldn't do to a child. Like you wouldn't, like if yeah, I'm not gonna get into that. But yeah, you can ask me for more particulars, but that's where I'll kind of leave it.
No, that's I think more than sufficient. So what is your relationship like with your family now?
Um, I have an okay relationship with my aunt, and that's about it. To
Okay.
be
So you're
quite
not close with
honest.
most of your family.
No, my mom is evil, so I don't talk to her.
Right. So, question I'd ask then is, outside of what we've covered so far, what are your big interests, like in terms of research, in terms of what you study or think about, or hobbies? It's like, what are you into?
Um, I'm into everything, honestly. Not everything. I like music, but I don't play it. That's one of the things I'm not into. I like drawing. I like reading books. I like listening. I like playing lots of video games. I like hiking. I like nature. Um, I just like absorbing information just as much as I can, especially about really cool stuff. Like recently, I've been watching Into the Microcosmos, which is like the Hank Green guy. Um, whatever you think of him, and he's got some drama or whatever, but he does a pretty good series on microbiology and like micro ecosystems, and it's really trippy. It's really cool. It's really cool stuff to learn about. I don't know. I just like learning about things. I have a degree in computer information technology, so I have a lot of, I wouldn't say surface level, but like I'm not an expert in computers, but I am a professional technically.
Cool. So you have
Yeah.
a bachelor degree? Is that what it is?
It's actually an associate's. So
I actually don't
not an
know what
expert.
that means, but nevertheless,
2 years.
we okay, cool. Like a diploma, we would call that here, perhaps. I don't know, but
It's not a high
regardless.
school diploma. It's like a step above a
Well,
high
no,
school
no,
diploma, basically.
yeah, exactly. So in Canada, it's different. I think we have what's called a college diploma, um, which is above a high school diploma. But anyways, um, interesting. So computer information technology. Okay. So we talked previously, you and I, about what your thoughts are on coronavirus. So since that's topical, what's your take on the whole coronavirus situation? And then after that, we'll open it up for anyone else who wants to ask questions or talk as well.
Um, my coronavirus situation is pretty good. I'm just at home, quarantined. I'm working from home right now, luckily, because my job has that option. And as soon as it started getting really serious in our area, they was just like, yeah, just work from home. Um, so yeah, I've been working from home. I have a stockpile of rice and some other things, and we also have a lot of canned food. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm doing pretty good.
Okay, but aside from your personal perspective, what's your take on the virus itself and what you think about it? Do you think it's engineered? Do you think it's natural? How bad do you think it's going to get,
Um,
etc.? Who do you think's
yeah,
behind it, if anyone?
I for sure think it's engineered. If it's not engineered, it's some whack ass shit they found in a that they made in a lab or that they were studying in a lab. From what I've seen, the Wuhan lab in China is probably where it came from, but there were also two workers from the lab that were working in a Canadian lab that's that's where they got in trouble for stealing COVID. Like I'm not sure if it was the
Which,
same
by the way,
strain.
is in my city. That weapons lab produces the most dangerous viruses on Earth, and if that weapons lab were ever breached, all of life on Earth would go extinct. All human life on Earth would go extinct within a few months. That's how dangerous the shit in there is. It's like a
Yeah,
stone's throw from where I am right now.
yeah. So that's pretty fucked, but I think it's really not. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be. It's not good. Um, but it's not. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's just kind of herald in the new order, which is kind of fitting. 2020. It's like a.
The new order.
I say the new order. Not like it's not like if there's a cabal or anything. There probably are cabals, but I'm not saying it's like there's. Uh, no, not like a world order where there's like cabals of people or there's like a council and they're all deciding, more just of what was going to happen before, without COVID. All of the stuff that's going to happen in the near future was going to happen anyway, just on a longer time span. um you're going to see, well, first of all, you're already seeing the EU break up. You're already seeing global supply chains collapse. You're already seeing um shortages of things that rely on the global supply chain, which is going to cause a lot of unrest and strife in areas that aren't the U.S. or its partners. Um, Basically, the U.S. was already pulling out of the World Trade System. We're the only ones who have kept it going for as long as it has. We are the police for the world's globalism, essentially. If you watch Peter Zeihan, he lays it out pretty clearly in his presentations. Um, we have 12 supercarrier groups, I believe. Nobody else on the planet has a single supercarrier group, and a single supercarrier group can take out like the combined navy of the Earth. So we have like overwhelming force over the entire planet, and we've been using that to protect globalism. Um, we've
Based.
been no, I don't think that's based at all. Um, we've been withdrawing from that system
No, but who
slowly
is
over
we?
time.
Like when
Trump
you
has
say
kind of
we've been
accelerated it.
withdrawing, who is we?
I'm
America.
sorry,
So
I can't understand or hear you if you try and talk when she's still talking.
America is trying to withdraw currently, or they have been, like the American government, just in general, slowly over time, because the only reason that we have used our massive navy to protect the world's global trade waters is because we wanted allies against communism. Communism doesn't really exist as a threat anymore. I know China is technically communist, but they're not trying to collapse the world with their ideology. They're just trying to become basically a new empire. Whereas previously, communism as an ideology was fighting against the West. But that's not really happening anymore. So we don't really need all these allies, and we don't need to spend all this money on a giant ally network and a giant global trade network. Trump has kind of accelerated this by meeting with different world leaders and saying, hey, what can you do for us to keep some of our super carriers out in the field around your waters? And as for Germany and the EU, they were like, you're going to do this because you've always done it. And Trump was like, ha, and then just left. And then just walked out. Just walked out the door. And took all of our
Okay, so I'm going to say one thing.
Look at
here.
this.
So the Jesuits actually do want a global communism for the entire world. They want one world government. They want one world communist Chinese style communism.
Good on the Jesuits, I guess. But what's gonna happen is we're gonna descend into a dystopian cyberpunk future, like you've seen in books or movies or TV, where giant megacorporations fight for power and imperialism returns to different nations, and it's all connected by a giant global information network, and we're gonna all see it play out in live right in front of us.
So I have one more question for you. Why do you take hormones?
Why do you take what, sorry?
Why do you take hormones? Like you take testosterone, right?
Well, that's a bit of a right turn. I wanted to follow up on the previous point, but you can ask that question, sure.
I take estrogen.
Oh, you
I
take
mean, the answer is
estrogen.
kind of
Okay.
obvious, isn't it?
No, I thought she took testosterone. So no, if she takes extra estrogen, that's
No, dude, bruh.
I'm a boy.
Why would she take testosterone?
I don't know. That's what I thought she meant. That's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a 101, and then we're not going to return to that because everyone else understands this. So when someone's trying to transition to the opposite gender, or at least resemble that gender, they take the hormones associated with that gender. So if you're male trying to identify as female, you take female hormones. What?
So Happy's a male?
Dude, we covered this in the podcast. Were you not here?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, well then don't come in at the end of the podcast and get confused about shit we covered earlier. That's irrelevant now. But yeah, anyways, moving on. So going back to the cyberpunk thing, I think that's really interesting, and I think your take on that is actually very accurate. And I think that's what we should think about in terms of the future. Yeah, sorry, I'm thrown off by that. So yeah, transgender people take the hormones the opposite sex in order to resemble that sex. So just so you know. But anyways, the cyberpunk future. So okay, so are you saying you think China is ascendant? Is that what you're saying? Like, do you think China is rising or something?
No,
because you said imperialism is rising in a new country or something.
No, imperialism is going to be on the rise everywhere. China is fucked. They rely on the global system to prop up their paper dragon, essentially. Their economy is probably one of the most untrustworthy and unstable on the planet, and this is likely going to contribute to their collapse as the global trade networks go under, because China is not energy self-sufficient. They require oil shipments coming in because they don't have a dedicated pipeline that, and they might have one or two pipelines, I think, but they don't have enough to bring in the amount of crude they need to actually supply their country. So there's going to be China's probably going to there's going to be probably a civil war, and it's probably going to collapse, and it's going to be all out warfare, and it's not going to be good. So this COVID thing for businesses and developers who are like, oh shit, probably shouldn't have invested in China. It's a good thing because now they know to get the fuck out. Because all this stuff was going to happen anyway. As far as the rest of the world, though, basically everyone else is stuck in the same situation, but not just with oil. Most of the world is stuck in the same situation with food. Most of the world does not have enough arable land to support the massive populations that we have without, number one, fertilizer or food imports. And fertilizer is a petrol product. So, yeah, not good. So that's the rest of the world. United States will be okay. We're energy independent. We have the most arable land in the world, period. We're fine. We have 2 trading partners. It's going to be a little rocky at first. We're going to have to get like back on the horse after this COVID thing. But we can do it really easily. We've survived way worse. We have 2 trading partners. We have Canada. We have Mexico.
My
Mexico
fucking
is a
cat
giant
just
factory.
knocked my entire container of weed over and spilled it
You're
all.
rude.
You son of a bitch, Guffy. You absolute son of a bitch. Sorry,
What's your cat's name?
Guffy.
Oh,
Luffy, so cute.
cook him.
He just spilled 7 grams of fucking super lemon haze completely onto the floor. Oh,
dude.
anyway, sorry, he's happy.
That's okay.
375 for 40 minutes.
So what were you talking about? You're talking about America's gonna be okay. So that was all actually really good breakdown. I'm in total agreement with you on your futurism and your socioeconomic and political analysis. So if we can open it up now to a broader discussion for the whole room pertaining to this, I think, and thank you for the interview. Happy, it was great, and we'll
can I start?
continue.
Okay.
No, shut
Thank
up.
you for having me.
Yeah,
okay,
thank you.
Fine. Shit.
Why are you calling yourself Jesus Christ? I thought you were a Christian. That's blasphemous.
Yeah, hey, you know what?
Have you abandoned your faith? We'll talk about that later. Anyways, so what I was going to say is there's a few things I want to just think about pertaining to this crisis. So when you have COVID-19, which is a global pandemic supposedly emerging out of China, seemingly genetically engineered, Russia blames America, America blames China, other people blame Canada, in a way, Chinese for stealing it from Canada. Now, the second aspect of this is that simultaneously there was an oil war between Vladimir Putin, who has no connection to the server whatsoever, and also the Saudi Arabians, who have initiated an oil war. So as far as I understand, the Saudis said, hey, Putin, cut your oil production because it'll make oil more valuable for us. Because if there's less oil, the price goes up. So stop producing so much oil in Russia because it's driving down the price of Saudi oil. And then Putin said, fuck you, Saudi sheiks, even though they'd had the awesome bro handshake that everybody's seen. They gave each other like straight up like bro handshake, which is a great gif. But yeah, so they initiated a trade war. So Putin began flooding the market with oil in order to push Canadian tar sands oil out of the market by making it uncompetitive, and American oil shales out of the. So there's oil shales in America, fracking, and tar sands in Canada, turning the forest into toxic waste dumps. Those are 2 really dirty, polluting forms of oil that Putin has condemned. And he is apparently willing to sacrifice trillions of dollars of his own money to try and push oil shales and oil sands out of the market. That's what I thought it was about. But now I'm thinking it was something different. So that oil war happened simultaneously with this COVID thing. And then there's all the stock market aspects to it. There was another piece of this that I wanted to fucking nail down. One was the oil war, the economy shutting down, food. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a record-breaking, like unprecedented locust swarms in not one but 2 different continents that are the worst that have been seen in living memory, basically. So we simultaneously have a global pandemic and an unprecedented locust swarm in 2 major continents of food-producing countries. So when you think that 2 continents are going to be devastated by literally locust swarms the size of entire states, eating all the food, at the same time as COVID is shutting down shipping, trading, packaging, factories, manufacturing, everything, then it doesn't take 2 brain cells to rub together to realize we're going to face, and then you combine that with a global economic, not recession, but depression. We're facing a simultaneous global economic depression, global economic pandemic, and global giant fucking locust swarm. So it all adds up to food shortage plus depression plus pandemic. And then people are saying civil crackdown, martial law, civil war, and possibly world war. I mean, there's literally no aspect of crisis or disaster or conspiracy that's not fully operational right now. And I'm known to be a doomsayer because I see the worst possible outcomes of things very easily. But all of them are there. So I don't know. I'll open it up if anyone wants to comment on that.
I just think that Donald Trump is doing the best he can.
No doubt about that.
So I wanted to make an interesting connection to all this stuff, especially with COVID and globalism and stuff. There's a few days ago, Donald Trump announced on a COVID, briefing or whatever, about him cracking down on the cartel. And it was an interesting theory that the reason why he'd bring this up during COVID and why he would want to attack the cartel now is to clear out Mexico in order to bring more manufacturing closer to the United States. I don't know if any of you guys have thoughts on that, but yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Sounds like what's going to happen, because if we need a giant manufacturing center and a lot of cheap labor down in Mexico, so
Actually, that was another point too, that China's labor's prices have increased, and now it's actually cheaper to produce in Mexico. At least that's what I heard.
Did you guys hear about how the cartel moved heavily into avocados?
yeah, I heard about that. That was fucking trippy, dude. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Avocados, are they any good? Have we tried
Yeah,
them?
no, literally, the cartel avocados are now like a cartel industry. So basically, when Canada and America legalized weed, it took a huge chunk of the cartel's profits away because they were growing Mexican dirt weed and shipping it up to Canada and America. But now that weed is legal, nobody wants Mexican dirt weed when you can get awesome dispensary weed. So they had to figure out a way to make up that revenue. So they, for whatever reason, went into avocados. So now there's literally dudes in like armed towers around avocado fields with like AKs and shit, and there's like people dying over avocados, and there's like avocado wars. It's very strange.
Well, the Sicilian mafia did something similar. They moved over into olive oil. Literally, olive oil is part of their racket. But they, I think it's more has to do not necessarily the fact that just weed was. It has to do with the distribution of the hard stuff is like harder to do these days, I think.
So they're just an illegal corporation now, basically.
Remember back when I used to say, making drugs legal is not enough to deal with, people like that? I really believe that's half the battle. I really believe that because of the size of such organizations, even if you cut all the revenues, they still have so much momentum. They're going to find some other source of revenue. So, yeah, I just wanted to point this out.
Yeah, you're right about that. I didn't really think of that before, but nevertheless, this is a completely separate ongoing conversation we've had about cartels. You do still have to begin by cutting their legs out from under them by legalizing all drugs to take all revenues away from the cartels, and then they will, out of desperation, use their built-up assets and armed forces to try and get into legal businesses through extortion and coercion. So then you will inevitably still have to do the phase 2 that you and I have talked about before, which we won't get into now. But
Or they'll just use their
anyways,
influence to become an actual corporation.
no, hopefully that would be the best outcome, right? They actually just invest that money or something and go legit. That would make more sense, wouldn't it?
I would prefer a strategic military strike after everything has become legal. I think that would just clean the area and just make more room for better things.
Would the military or world governments prefer that? That's the question.
By the way, they're mobilizing all the militaries around the world. So in Canada, as part of the response to COVID, they are giving full-time jobs to all the reservists as federal soldiers, and then, they're ready to activate like thousands of soldiers all around the world. So
Damn.
This is just kind of a meandering podcast now, but I think some kind of institution of martial law is kind of inevitable almost everywhere now. So I think we're really going to see the end of the whole way of life that we've known of, being free, basically, being able to just kind of go about our lives. I think it's all going to be crackdowns now. It's all going to be curfews and fucking tracking. Like, they're literally putting ankle monitors on people now who have not committed any crime whatsoever, right? To make sure they don't break their quarantines.
Yeah.
And I get it. It makes sense. I just think it's as crazy as it is, right? Because I've studied this for a long time. And they've been doing the boiled frog method for so long, where they just slowly turn up the tyranny, turn up the supervision, turn up the whatever, monitoring, surveillance, degree by degree, so we don't notice it and freak out. But then they're just like, all right, it's gone far enough, you know. And then the next part is just a massive acceleration. They release this engineered virus, lockdown, surveillance, curfew, patrols, mobilize the military. Like, this is it, folks. This isn't a drill. This is the
Deus
real
Ex
deal.
was right again.
Isn't it fucking awesome? Holy shit, man. It feels like we're in a video game.
Bruh, Deus Ex predicted everything.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
Deus
only played
Ex.
the second one, Deus Ex 2. What was it called? Human Revolution or something like that? Really
No,
good game.
that's the
Oh, man.
remake. I'm
The
talking
fucking
about
swords that you can bring out of your elbows. Yeah, no, I didn't play the original.
I'm talking about the original. The original had like shit about it didn't have the twin towers in it, and it was made before 9/11. They said it was because of graphical reasons, but that's a pretty prescient thing to leave out of your game.
Yeah, that's
Um,
trippy. And I mean, even the second one had deep, you know, conspiracy theories and plots and connections. But I just
For
read
sure.
about Deus Ex 1. I don't play old games that are outdated, but I know that one was legendary. And man, being able to take graphene katanas at your elbows and just, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I've been thinking about playing it with all this shit going on again. Might download it tomorrow.
So Happy, when did you decide to become a transgender?
We covered all this, Infinite. If you're going to keep asking questions, if you weren't
no, I
here
was
for the
wondering, like, I
beginning,
was
no,
like,
well, because
for,
you're
like-
returning to shit that we covered earlier in the podcast. So now you're fucking the podcast. If you weren't here for the beginning, that's not the audience's problem. We're not reiterating over shit we covered already. We're talking about completely unrelated shit now.
Have you guys heard about the 9/11? And it was Back to the Future. I guess it would be part 3. No, part 2, he goes to the future. But yeah, like literally in some of those scenes there, it's showing the World Trade Centers come down.
Interesting.
Oh, the World Trade Centers. Go ahead, Shogun.
Well, yeah. So Happy, before we not necessarily close, but continue, was there anything else you did want to talk about or cover yourself or get into?
No. You want to talk about hypnosis?
Yeah, that was actually that. Thank you for reminding me. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. So, how did you get into hypnosis? How did you first come across it and get involved with it?
I've had a sexual kink for hypnosis for about 8 years, I think. Since I was 14, so yeah, about 8 years. Started off with like light stuff. I've been in different hypnosis communities. I've been around different boards for a while. Mostly just lurking because under 18 you get kicked off pretty easily. Been listening to hypnosis for a long time and learning how to quote unquote drop, and also learning in the process like some techniques about how to hypnotize people.
So, what does the concept of drop mean? I mean, I kind of have a vague idea of it in my mind, but I would like you to try and explain it.
It's where your mentality. It's like where you. It's hard to explain without doing it. What you do to somebody to make them drop is you get them in a very relaxed state. So you have them at home, sitting in their chair, or laying down in their bed, and then you begin to just get them into a relaxed state of mind. First, typically, I like to start with. There's a few different techniques that I learned and I picked up. I like to start with the body and just having them breathe in and out, like slowly, steadily. This slows down the heart rate. Then after that, you go into a bit of psychosomatic stuff where you get them to imagine their arms and their legs and their body as very, very, very heavy. When they're in that relaxed state, it's very easy to get them to imagine that. And once they start imagining that, you can start to reinforce it and you can start to manipulate that feeling. This is how I like to bring people down. There's a bunch of different ways. But once you start to get them to feel that way and you start to reinforce that a little bit, then you can start to mix it with the other parts of the session that you're going to get into, and like kind of like the mindscape that you build for them, or the what's the word? Not mindscape, but like kind of the place you want them to be. So I'll take the weight and I'll make them feel like they're sinking into the floor. They're going down and down, and they're floating and they're floating. Or you can use the staircase trick, which is pretty useful. You count down from 10 every step, makes them go down, and you describe how it feels. You just describe getting more relaxed, and obviously you have to do it in a certain voice. I have developed a hypnotist voice that if you get hypnotized by me, you will hear. And once you get them down into that state, once you get them down into like the down to the bottom of the staircase, you can then do a lot of fun things with their brain.
Well, that's interesting. And you have agreed to attempt this process on me. Is that correct?
Yes. It's going to be fun.
So I'm looking forward to experiencing that because I've never been hypnotized. I'm curious how that will go. I will perhaps give an update on that in a future podcast. Awesome. Does anyone have any further questions? Is there anything else you wanted to cover, Happy?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Well, I think this was a great episode. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Happy, for being the guest today. Thank you to the live audience, and thank you to the recorders and anybody joining us on the podcast apps like Podbean or Podcast Addict. Please join us on all social media. Check out our Minecraft server, which, by the way, Happy set up and paid for, I think. So thank you very much, Happy, for the Minecraft server.
Yeah, I got a realm set up.
For some reason, people like Minecraft. It's a strange world we live in. But if you like Minecraft, the Roundtable has a Minecraft server, which is surely the best Minecraft server in the history of Minecraft.
Thank you for being a friend.
Thank you for being a friend. Exactly. Lean on me.
Oh, I wanted to say one more thing.
Yeah.
Burger King foot fungus. The last thing you want in your Burger King burger is someone else's foot fungus. But that might be what you got.
I don't disagree with that, but I don't see why we needed to know that now. But I definitely do not want foot fungus in my Burger King. I can't argue. Holy shit! I just accidentally created a sweet pipe. That's trippy.
L'chaim.
I literally took a piece of metal tube in my hand and put it down absentmindedly, and it landed in the bowl of my bong and created like a crack pipe. It's awesome.
I was gonna say that sounds like a fucking freebase crack pipe, bro.
I literally just accidentally like put it right in the hole of the fucking pipe bowl. That was trippy. Anyways, yeah, smoke less or more. Sir Dougleton is a Christian, but he's drinking whiskey tonight.
The power of Christ compelled him.
That reminds me of Conor McGregor watching Mark Hunt fights, and after every Mark Hunt fight, he knocks a dude out cold. He's known as the walk-away KO king or whatever because he just knocks someone out instead of jumping on him. He just knows they're out, and he just walks off before he just drops them. And every time he goes, "Thank you, Jesus!" And then Conor McGregor is watching, and he laughs so hard. He goes, "Yeah, Jesus loves knockouts." It's just so funny. Anyway, sorry. That's completely unrelated, and nobody except me enjoyed that. Anyways, thank you, Happy. Thank you, everybody. Join us through the Roundtable Discord server, Discord, Conspiracy Theory and Politics, and the roundtablediscord.com. Thanks, everybody. Now let's jump to a regular room and begin the shit fest.